Wow, the color is horrible. Hmm. I don't know that I can fix that because this is my laptop on the built-in webcam. Oh, that's gonna be way too hot. So, welcome. Good morning. Well, good evening. Whatever the fuck it is. I'm like half asleep. Um, if you have any questions you want to put in, and we'll change up topics. That is perfectly fine. Um, Otherwise, we're going to start with what makes a classic. And I guess that person did not have any questions and didn't feel like sticking around. So, what makes a classic? And we're literally talking about, if you asked a bunch of people, what are some classic guns or calibers, what would they list? And we're talking right now. We're not talking asking 10 years ago, what is a classic? And I think that a lot of people, 30-06, 30-30, 308, we wouldn't say 223. For some reason, we don't think of it as a classic, right? Um, there we go. I don't know. I feel like I'm cockeyed with the camera. I don't know. Yeah. Um, it is, 30-30. Old Winchester lever actions. People won't even specify. Whether it's a 66, a 73, a 72, a Marlin 97. Like, people won't specify. It'll just be an old lever action in 30-30. 45 Colt, classic, right? 357, classic. 44 Magnum, classic. Even though we're still using them, even though they're still a thing, these are classic calibers. An old Model 29 revolver, classic. Is a 686 a classic? I don't know that I would consider it a classic. Same era, effectively the same generation, right? But one kind of got into that classic, and one has constantly been updated and kept with the times, and we don't think of it that way. An AR-15. The first AR-15s are early 60s, right? Nobody thinks of it as a classic. Now, an early AR-15 might be a classic AR-15, but as a group, we don't consider them classics. They're still evolving. They're still constantly being fine-tuned. And I think that's the key. When something has reached its pinnacle of development a while back, a generation of people back, and we still use it, we still love it, I think that's part of what makes it a classic. I gotta not burn myself. I burn myself on lunch, and I need to not do that. I really think it's an age and a end of evolution. There wasn't something that superseded it as a standalone product. There's always going to be things that supersede them. But for example, the single action army revolvers, the Colt revolvers, they were the epitome of a single action revolver. If you look at what's being sold today, they are modernized tweaks on that gun, to the point where companies go out of their way to recreate that gun in something they can produce efficiently in modern times and not get sued. They add various kinds of safeties and things like that, but they're going as close as they think they can do. U.S. Firearms in Connecticut, they're out of business now because the owner made some silly choices. But I knew the guy. He was not a dumb guy, but he got that idea for that 22 in his head, and he whole hog went into it, and it was a flop, and that was kind of it. But he was recreating by hand. His craftspeople. There was modern machinery, but they were hand finishing those revolvers just like the originals. They were as if, a Colt factory back in the 1800s had modern machinery and tools. They were selling like crazy. They could not keep up. They had high end, they had mid end, and they were selling like crazy. That's a classic. There's no doubt, right? Winchester Model 70. We think of that as more of a classic than a 700, right? A Remington 700, because there's still new Remington 700s coming out, new styles, new versions, new generations. Yeah, there are classic Remington 700s, but as a firearm, it's less of a classic than a Model 70. A 870, Remington 870 shotgun, not nearly as classic as a Model 12, a Winchester Model 12. Even the Model 1100, the Remington 1100, is more of a classic than the 870 because it stopped. Its development finished and is still in use. It's still a thing. And that said, I think that part of it is that they're still popular. There's still things where modern buyers, new buyers, people 20 years old, 21 years old, they just entered the full firearms market, looked at these and went, I want one. I want that gun. I want that caliber. I like that. That's cool. As opposed to it all being old timers, nostalgia, memories, wanting to go back, like that whole thing, right? No. I think the classics are the ones that they're still relevant. They're still viable modern options. Now, maybe they're not viable for everything, but what is a Model 29 that a current 44 Magnum revolver is not? Expensive, but modern ones are expensive too. Maybe it's grip control, grip feel in your hand for recoil control isn't as good. You can get other grips. Maybe the cylinder isn't as, narrow as it could be. Maybe there's not porting on the barrel. Well, I don't want porting on my 44 Magnum because it freaking puts a muzzle flame in my face. Whatever it is, right? What makes 308 a classic? Because it's been around since my grandfather's time and hasn't significantly changed. Bullets have developed, but the caliber has not suddenly gotten faster, has not been made obsolete, has maintained its position and survived all these years and thrived. It's a classic. Is it going anywhere? No. I think all these things that we consider classics today, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we will still see them. They will still be available unless firearms are completely outlawed and banned entirely. We will still see them. There will still be Model 29s in circulation. They'll be old because they're not making them, but they'll be out there. 44 Magnum will still be there. 357 Magnum will still be there. 308, 45 Colt. These will all still exist. Thank you to whoever did the thumbs up. There's nobody showing up as in here, but I'm assuming you popped in and then left. So yeah, that's kind of what I look at as a classic. Now, put your comments in the comments. What makes a classic for you? Just post some of your favorites. I've only mentioned a little slice, right? I haven't exhausted the category. So feel free to put in the comments or post in the chat ones that you think are modern classics. Not modern, but still available classics. Because, for example, we're not talking about classics that are now considered antiquated. If it is not something I can go to the store and buy, at least sort of, it may be a used item, but it's available. I don't need to go to a museum for it, right? Put it in there. Because I think there's a lot of them. I think that most of what we use today that is not brand new, isn't the latest and greatest. A lot of it's a classic. I, I mean, 10 years from now, Michael, I think right now it's too new to be a classic. But certainly, I mean, most of Henry's model line could be just considered classics. Like that's their market, right? Yeah. He left. Hit and run. Um, so yeah, I mean, Michael mentions, the Model X, the Henry Model X, which is their modern version of a classic lever action. Oh, you're here. It weird as hell. It shows nobody on my thing. It shows that there's nobody here. That is freaking annoying. So yeah, I mean, most of their product line is classic. The engineering inside that gun is absolutely classic. I mean, it's not like the internals are different. But they took a classic and they said, how do we make it relevant in today's world? Not for today's market, but today's world. Because people are still buying the classic versions. But hey, people want to put a light on it. People actually want to use this in the real world, not as a classic. And we'll see. I think that as we go forward, AR-15s are going to become classic because we're going to eventually replace them. Something is going to replace it. I mean, it may be energy weapons in the 40-watt range, but we'll see. So I don't know. I mean, that's about all I had to say on classic stuff. On the political stuff, I let my education browse over the news and the Twitter world and all that for the last couple of days, and it is starting to gel that they are working on damage control ahead of the election, meaning they are intentionally letting various crises come to a head now when there's all this other stuff. We've still got COVID stuff for a lot of people. That's still a hot topic for a slice of the population. You have Ukraine. You have just generally the economy, the gas situation, the food situation. The food situation isn't going to come to a head for at least another month, if not longer. It may be in the fall and into the winter because that's when this year's crops come through. That's when bread manufacturers go, well, there was only so much food. There's only so much wheat. There's only so much cornmeal. So prices are higher. Availability is lower. It costs more because the farmer had to pay more in fuel. And all this stuff gets treated as a commodity. It's not being traded and bought and sold directly. Most of it is being treated as a commodity, and people are buying it by the trainload. But if there's only so much of it, if there's less than normal and the price already starts higher because the farmers had to pay more to produce it, it's going to start showing up. But it's all going to start showing up a little down the road. So they're trying to get the damage control in now so that in a year, when they start election process to try to get people in for nominations, they start campaigning for their nominations, not the actual election, but they start jockeying for position. That all these scandals are now old news. They can brush them aside as, well, that wasn't my problem. I'm not that guy. I'm not that gal. It's not my fault. And I think what we're going to see is that this is going to continue. They're going to slow roll the Hunter Biden laptop. They're going to let the various Republicans pushing it make a little progress, make some noise, cause some trouble with it, so that it's mostly old news. People are sick of it. People are done with it. People aren't thinking about it in a year and a half. when it might matter. Where if they have to throw him under the bus, it's a huge issue. Throw him under the bus in the next 6 months, whatever, no big deal. Biden doesn't run for election, but they've got a replacement in time. You don't want to throw Hunter Biden under the bus in a year and a half or 2 years from now when that completely screws up anything related to the Biden administration rerunning. Because if Kamala wants to run, if anybody is currently in his camp, wants to run for anything, smeared, done. Anybody that was the Hunter Biden, laptop is bullshit. Anybody who said that, anybody who was involved in that, they needed to be old news the next time they're up for election. They needed people to be so burned out on it that they just don't care. They tune it out. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing them prepare for that. And this is not, high strategy. This is basics. You get people used to something before it matters, before you have to be held to account for it. If it's old hat, the animosity is lessened. The acute pain is already assimilated. It's down to a throbbing ache, right? You're not running for the medicine cabinet at that point. You're just kind of like, screw it, whatever. Let me finish my day. And I think that's what they're counting on, because otherwise, how is that election going to go? I mean, let's be realistic. Let's look at what the election in 2024 could look like. What Democrat that has had any involvement in the current disasters has said things that are going to haunt them in regards to COVID, Russia, Hunter, just generally speaking, the economy? All of them are going to be, and I'm sure there's more crises that will be brought out. I mean, this is going to be a thing. The Russia collusion stuff, the dossier that they created for messing with Trump. Anybody smeared with any of this needs it to be old news if they want to have a prayer. And I don't think they have a prayer. Like, I think that too much of it, too fast. One or two things you can gloss over, but like key members of Congress are smeared with all of this. Key power players are smeared with all of this. If you are somebody who's running for office as a Democrat, last election, you would be talking to Hillary Clinton. You would be talking to the Clinton Foundation. Not so much that they're personally going to help you, but that they can put you in touch. They're the power brokers, right? Now, you may want to go as far away from them as possible because you don't want to be splattered with that issue. You don't want to be splattered with anything related to that, right? I would not be surprised if Ms. Maxwell dies soon. They need her out of the picture and not able to be brought forth to testify, not be talking to the media, not be a subject of conversation other than, wow, convenient that she's dead. Because the only people that are going to care about that, we're not voting for you anyway. Those are going to be the core Republicans that were just never going to vote for you. What they're worried about is that 30% in the middle. There is the middle block, and then like 10% on either side in addition to that maybe they just don't vote because they don't like any of them. Maybe they swing back and forth. They're not that middle block, but they literally go, on this election, I'm over there. Or I'm there for my congressperson, but I'm not there locally. I'm not there for the president, right? I mean, it is what it is. I know politicians on the left that I would vote for because while they may be a left-leaning agenda, they are not extremists, and we agree on key topics. And their opposition is stupid. Like, I mean, if your Republican opposition is just an idiot and is incompetent, I'm not going to vote for them. So if my option is to not vote or vote for somebody that I think will do a good job, even if I disagree with them on a few issues, yeah, I would rather the competent, well-meaning, capable person be in, as long as I don't think their agenda is so horrible that I'm actively opposed to it. Um, I also think we're seeing a lot of people wake up to the fact that we have been snowed by the media and by Washington for a very long time. Because as more and more people get their news from multiple outlets that are not controlled by the government, not controlled by big media, it becomes harder and harder for them to perpetuate the big lie. As the Nazis were fond of. A big enough lie told often enough becomes truth. And we have used that in this country for a very long time and made it work. They've absolutely done that. And what they're finding now is that when you do that and you get caught over and over and over, people stop believing you, even when you're telling the truth. So even when you're not full of it, you are assumed to be lying. You are untrustworthy. The typical cry wolf scenario, right? Well, if you've lied to people enough, they don't believe you when you don't lie. They just assume you're full of it. Well, if you're the media, if you are a politician trying to run for election, now people look at it and go, really? And they understand that they need to look for other sources of information. They need to go actually look at your voting record. You say you were this, this, and this, but when they go look at your voting record, they go, well, that's really not what you did. You may say that, and that may have been what you intended to do when you got elected, but what you actually did was this. Now, we all know how they screw with laws, and it's like, well, if you want this part of the law, you've got to vote for the whole thing. And there's these parts that you absolutely object to. Did you fight it? Where's your speech in Congress saying that you absolutely oppose this? It needs to be ripped out of that bill. Or did you go along? Did you make a backdoor deal and say, well, I'll vote for this if you'll vote for my thing, if my little pork can get added to that bill? Or did you stand up and obey your oath and live to your oath and do what was right? And I think that it has become too easy for people to verify this stuff. There are too many sources. There's too many bloggers. There's too many YouTube channels. There's too many Twitter, outlets to hide this. It's all out there. You can't bullshit people and make it hold up for any length of time. And the media and the government has not caught up to this. They still feel like if we say it enough times with our authority behind it, people will believe. Right. And certain people do. I mean, witness COVID. How many people have been boosted to the max who didn't have to? They were not legally required, and honestly think this is going to make a huge difference and are completely on board and are getting tested constantly and don't understand that they have bought into a myth. They've bought into a lie. They've bought into a power struggle that, while isn't personally affecting them in a negative way necessarily, it is, they have perpetuated this idiocy. Now, obviously, if you are in a practice where, yes, you must be tested regularly for various reasons, power to you, whatever. A lot of my friends are medical professionals that deal with the elderly, and they basically get tested constantly. They're vaccinated up the wazoo. It's not for them. It's for their patients. It's so that they're less likely to harm their patients who are extremely susceptible, who, if they get so much as a cold, are at risk of death. Yeah, it's a thing. Like, that makes sense, right? But the person driving around in their car alone, wearing a mask, a paper surgical mask that does no good, even if you believe in the mask setup, like if you thought you were wearing a mask in the proper way for the proper reasons, that mask is not an appropriate mask, right? It's a spit guard, by the way. If you're wearing a regular surgical mask, it's not it's a spit and splash guard. That's all that is. So, people bought that. My own parents are 100% bought in on these things and cannot explain it to them, cannot get through. This is what I did for a living. I used to have to certify people to wear, various protective equipment. And one of the things we did a lot of research on was protective masks. What works? What doesn't? In what situation? The government has done tests. Manufacturers have done tests. A paper mask does not protect you from COVID. It does protect the person you sneezed toward across the room. Absolutely helps in that scenario. But it's not for you. So if you're alone in your car and you're wearing the mask, you're an idiot. You completely misunderstand how this works. Except that the government brainwashed you. Literally, they brainwashed you. That's what they did. And they are continuing to do so. Every day I hear ads on the radio from Pfizer, from not Johnson, who was the other one that I heard? Can't remember, but I heard the Pfizer one today. Get your booster, blah, blah, blah. We're doing this together. This is propaganda. This is brainwashing and propaganda. And it's well done, but it's so transparent at this point that I don't think they realize that the majority of people listening to it are going, yeah, fuck you. Screw you. You're full of it. You're lying to me. The fact that you had to put at the end of this, sponsored by the company that, oh gosh, made billions. Yes, the shot is free for you, for the person getting it, but your taxes paid for it. My taxes paid for it. The next guy's taxes paid for it. The money didn't come from nowhere. The company isn't giving it away. The government's paying for it. Well, where does the government get their money? Right, exactly. And these are the things that, wrapping this back around, they need to effectively make these non-issues for 2 years from now, a year and a half to 2 years from now. And I think they're going to fail. I think that too much of it, the memoir thing, it's too easy for these to be brought back and the emotions to be brought back. And too many people are too frustrated. I think that's a lot of it, is that the younger generation, the millennials, and even some younger and a little older, they're looking at this stuff and they are so disillusioned. They honestly, a lot of them feel like their future has been stolen from them, because a core part of their development period as young adults or transitioning to adults has been this idiocy, has been this insanity. But they were old enough to remember before it. And they're old enough to start seeing it for what it is. They're not so young that they just don't understand. They're young enough that they might have bought in, and many people did, from all age brackets, right? Otherwise it would have been a complete joke. But over time, more and more of them clued in and red pilled. That's how they, what the phrase is, right? You got red pilled. And more people are getting red pilled. And that doesn't mean they're going to the Republican side. They may still absolutely be Democrats. They may absolutely support the core foundational Democrat agenda, not the socialist side, not the far left. I'm talking just the basic core of it. we're like pro-life versus pro-choice, that kind of thing. Like, there's a lot of basic issues that the left and the right differ on, but most people, I have my opinion, you have your opinion, but we're willing to wiggle around on this, not on our personal opinion, but like we're willing to let the government sway back and forth, and we'll bitch about it, but like we're not going to be up in arms. And then there's you went too far, right? And the government has gone too far, and a lot of people are going, I'm on the same side of the slash as you, but this is too far. And this came up today, particularly because we were talking about the ATF basically writing their own laws and deciding that the forced reset triggers were a machine gun, like just outright, nope, we're declaring them a machine gun, and that this is so far outside of their legal abilities, right? But they're letting them get away with it. Nobody in Congress has the leverage to go, no, you can't do that. That is not your purview. That is incorrect assumption of authority. That is our authority, and we're going to smack you down. Because there isn't a large enough group that is willing to take that stand. What I think is going to happen is that come election season, a whole lot of first-time running Republicans are going to use that. They're going to use a lot of the overreach by the ATF. They're going to use a lot of the shenanigans they have pulled over the last few years, starting with while Trump was in office, when the ATF was basically defying him, and keep on going with it. And they'll get away with it 100%, because even the left, look at how many people bought guns. That was not a left and right thing in the last few years. A lot of people on the left got into guns. A lot of people saw, hey, this is not a safe situation. I want to be armed. Now it wasn't left or right. If anything, percentage-wise, more on the left, because the folks on the right already had them. Well, now they're starting to wake up to the shenanigans the ATF pulls. I see it all the time on my Twitter stream, because my Twitter stream is crypto related. I've said this before. It's crypto, not firearms. And the crypto Twitter world is a little more anarchist to left leaning. And the amount of people that have been red pilled related to government overreach, government abuse, ATF overreach, just this whole insanity that is the government bureaucracy taking on a life of its own is massive. Like, in the shift in the last few years, because that's been my Twitter for the last like 7 years. The shift since COVID, since even, COVID basically, has been incredible. And the number of people that have been red pilled for the Trump Russia collusion thing, the hypocrisy of what Biden said when he wasn't the president versus when he was the president, things he was like, well, Trump should be doing this and this and this. And then when he's the president, complete 180 degrees. Well, you can't roll that back these days. It's way too easy for somebody to go, well, here's your Twitter post from then, here's your Twitter post from now, or take a screen grab of the press conference and a screen grab of your recent press conference and put them together and go, yeah, maybe you should have thought that through better. Didn't age well. And what we were talking about was that when we get the shift in government, because nobody really believes that the Democrats are going to maintain power after the next election. They have shot themselves in the foot way too badly. The question is simply how badly. Are they completely like routed horribly, or is it just a tipping of the scales, right? Well, the thought was, if you work for the ATF and you're above the rank of special agent, you should probably be looking at your next career move, right? Are you going to have a job? If you serve at the mercy of the president, if you are a political appointee if you are somebody that your political appointee directly, hires and fires, right? You are not just another rank and file lobby. Your days are numbered in office. Your days are numbered in that building. You are most likely going to be looking for a job. And when you put that you work for the ATF on your resume, you may be unemployable. People are going to look at that and go, well, I mean, you can get a job with the Brady Group, with the Clinton Foundation, with Moms Against or Moms Demand Action. Southern Poverty Law Center might hire you. But is anybody in the gun industry going to hire you? No, because that used to be a thing. You do ATF and then you go back to the industry. Nobody in the industry wants to hire you. If you were one of those political members of ATF, not just another agent doing their job, who's going to hire you? Outside of the political world, nobody. And nobody's going to publish your articles if you decide to write instead. You're pretty much anathema, and it's going to be interesting. And that is very sad. We're out of hot chocolate, folks. Crisis. It was, however, very good. So yeah, that was where that came up, is that we're going to see that political shift. And then I think that there will be this mandate to clean house, so to speak. I think a lot of people at the FBI will be tossed. A lot of the intelligence services are going to be looking at a whole lot of forced retirement. Everybody that signed off on that dossier, everybody who signed off that the Biden laptop was false. Is your security clearance going to be renewed under that new administration? I don't think so. You're not going to qualify for top secret, much less anything higher. You literally sold your career for political expediency. When the next group is in power, that's not going to fly. You literally violated your oath and then did it to the detriment of a particular group. And now that group is back in control. They're not going to let you stay. I don't care how important you are to the group, system you're part of. You're toast. You're out of here. I mean, that's true even when it's not political. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually, maybe we'll see what happens, but they actually try to prosecute people. Trump tried his first couple of years in office. He tried. Barr kind of slow rolled that shit and brushed it away. But it wasn't as popular. The core Trump crowd wanted it. And a lot of other people wanted to see it happen, but weren't necessarily, the political groups, meaning, weren't quite ready for that fight. But now, the Democrats declared open war. I mean, they literally were like, if you disagree with us, we're saying you a traitor. We're calling you a traitor. They've literally said that. If people did not agree with them in Congress, you were a traitor. If you questioned anything, you were a traitor. Prosecute them, go after them, cancel them, dox them, impeach them. I mean, this was a thing. And once you go too far, a lot of the people who are going to come in and a lot of the people who are going to stay are going to remember this. They're going to look at this and go, well, that's fine. You want to play scorched earth? If you want to make those threats, guess what? The people you were accusing were not guilty of anything except disagreeing with you. But you were guilty. The things you're claiming, this person is guilty of, you really are guilty. Your own words are going to convict you. And I don't know that they'll ever do it. I mean, we have seen multiple times over the years, over and over and over, that people are allowed to retire, people are slapped on the wrist, they get a little fine. I mean, I don't know that anything will actually happen, but some of these FBI agents that signed off on the FBI or on the Steele dossier, I mean, they were lying to justices to get uh, warrants for that general. I mean, they put him in jail for a while. They confiscated his computers, his files, all fabricated information, all complete lies. Who knew? Trace that up the chain. Somebody involved in actually going after him knew that it was bullshit. And that person should be in jail. The average agent involved, they didn't have a choice. They didn't even know what they were doing. They may have thought they knew, but like knowing legally and knowing ethically are different. Even the guy who signed the paperwork to get the warrant, maybe he knew, but he didn't know. He got told, "Here's the information. Go do it." But the person who said, "Here's the information," the person who got told by Hillary or one of Hillary's people, you know, Hillary skated on so many violations of, the various information laws for keeping information secret and related to the email system. So many violations. Every email that was on that server, every email that came and went from that server was a violation. The fact that that server existed was a violation. The fact that it was in her home and she was using it instead of using the official government server was a violation. The fact that she was intentionally going around the system designed to allow FOIA should immediately have had her kicked out. At some point, you may get, I mean, I think Hillary is probably done. Nobody's going to care. At this point, she's right. What does it matter? She's done. But you could make her so toxic that nobody will even go to her, party, that nobody will even want to work for her. And you can start tracking back who she's worked with to do these things. Put them in jail. Get them at least out of government service. Take away their ability to do these things. And I mean, I've gotten so off topic here, but it's one of those things where if you see a big power shift, suddenly these kinds of things become possible. And that is what the Democrats are fearing right now. They're doing damage control and crisis mitigation ahead of time to minimize that swing, to minimize the ability for the Republicans to attack and prosecute these people. Their hope is that they get another judge in, and that will stymie any kind of balance in the court for a long time in the Supreme Court. I think that if they do, it may honestly not be good for our nation. In terms of having a peaceful future for our nation internally. One of the things that, in my opinion, has kept a lid on civil disobedience over legal swings in our country has been the Supreme Court is relatively balanced. And we look at it as we may lose this one, but we'll win that one. We'll lose this one, back and forth. And you may not like the exact makeup. You may, swear and rant about a particular decision, but you feel like there's at least some parity and balance there. If that's removed and there are some extremely lopsided, very politically driven decisions on key topics, the gloves may come off. People may go, you know what? I no longer have faith that the system will self-correct, that we will get to the next election intact and be able to adjust. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. I honestly, I don't have an opinion. I think that's the kind of thing where you have to decide for yourself as it happens and decide where your line is. And there's no right answer. Like it's never a good thing, right? There's no good answer on that kind of situation. But there is, at some point, an ethically right one. So, okay, we're at 45 minutes. If nobody has any questions, comments, new topics, anything, I'm going to call it a night. I have been up a long time, and I have other things I need to get done and to get ready for work tomorrow, and call it a night. So feel free to pop something in the chat area if you want to add something. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me the FBI is waiting for me outside and I should put my hands up. Look, if they have Hillary with them, I'm not going quietly. Otherwise, whatever. It's for lawyers, right? It's what lawyers are for. But I did not hang myself, nor did I shoot myself in the head 3 times. Or what was the other one? Can't remember. And I didn't drive my car off a cliff or into a bridge. My car doesn't go fast enough to kill me if I drove into a bridge. Too many airbags and crumple zones and all that jazz. And there's no good cliffs around here to drive off of. I'm in the hill country, but the hills are small. Okay. Good night. It only shows 1 person watching, so good night to you. But as we saw earlier, that might mean there's 5 people watching. I don't know. Take care all. Stay safe. Keep shooting. I will say I just added to my ammo. I did another 200 rounds of 9mm today. And I think I'm going to keep buying, a little here or there. I may add more 223, but I decided rather than small pistol primers, because I did have a box of them in my hands, I would do ammo, because the other components for loading 9mm add up to, by the time you add, the price of those primers, I'm not saving much money over just buying the ammo at this point. And I don't have my reloading gear set up. So time, energy, effort, I was like, you know what? I'll just buy the ammo. So ciao, guys. As another person comes in. So new person, do you have anything you want to talk about? Question, comments, throw them up in top chat. I was going to sign off, but technically we have like another 13 minutes if we want to stay. I usually go for an hour if you're new. I usually go for an hour unless there's something just completely boring and nothing's happening. It's funny. I get more people when I go off my political rants. I think that YouTube is paying attention to what I'm talking about and showing it to people. Because when I'm talking about the gun stuff, I'm lucky if 1 person's watching. But I get into a political rant, and suddenly I've got 2 or 3, 4 or 5 people in there. Okay, we're done. Out. Ciao. Bye. Night.